Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's video, there's a few things I'd like to look at, mainly on the USE minis, and talk about a few different things. But to start with, I'd like to show what happened yesterday, which was March the 31st, Tuesday, March the 31st, as a great example of the cyclical nature of trading. I teach this a lot in our trading webinars, and it's basically where markets go through cycles of periods of good trades. You can see yesterday was a perfect example of this. We had a TS3 sell setup here that basically nailed the high of the day on the YM yesterday. I mean, what a great place to be selling. If we look at the STF, this was black stroke red, so it was a standard MTPredictor trade setup. If we place the analysis on, you can see the market came down to its first target here, where there was a profit of 7.5R. These buy setups here would have been ignored because the STF was still red. Aggressive traders may have decided to either trail at the bar highs and captured a little bit more profit, or maybe run into the close using the ATR stop. But even at the first target, the profit of 7.5R means that using our correct position sizing, the profit would have been 7.5 times greater than the initial risk. This is what we look at in MTPredictor. We don't look at having a high percentage of winners because we know over time that's really hard to achieve. What we do is following what most professional traders do, and that's look to control the risk. In other words, keep the initial risk small and have profits that are much larger than the initial risk or the losses. And that's exactly what we did yesterday with this great short setup. But the reason I wanted to talk about the cyclical nature of trading is here was a great day with a very nice big profitable trade. But if we scroll back to the previous day, look at that, a very narrow range, choppy, horrible day. Previous day before that, again, a narrow range, choppy, horrible day. This is the way markets unfold. They will have days when, quite frankly, they are really difficult to trade with horrible, yucky patterns. And really, on those days, you shouldn't expect anything. It's basically the hard part of the cycle that I talk about. But then after that, you suddenly then get a lovely day like this, where you have an absolutely brilliant trade set up that gives you a very high profitable trade. And this is just working with markets, how they unfold in real life. Having expectations that you want to make a set amount of money each day is basically impractical because markets just don't unfold like that. Let's have a look at the ES. The ES was great as well, with another great trade here. But what I particularly liked about this trade was how yesterday was an inside gap down. You can see our little indicator at the bottom said it was an inside gap down. What these tend to do is they tend to fill the gap. Inside gaps tend to fill. In other words, they tend to go back to the previous day's close. So if we place our high-low close on for the previous day, you can see we've got a little indicator to do that really easily. You can see the previous day's close was at 76.25. So when we came up to this TS3 sell, guess what the high was? Well, the high was, if I look up the top here on that particular bar, the high was 76.25. In other words, this TS3 sell closed the previous day's gap absolutely perfectly. And that's something we would have been anticipating and looking for, knowing that yesterday was an inside gap. So that gave that TS3 sell some more weight. In other words, a good one to actually consider. It was also on a black STF trend was down. If I now just take that off and I place the analysis on this first setup here, place the analysis on, it went down to the first target a bit later in the day, where a nice 4.9R profit was available. It did have a little bit of a rally in between. For the more experienced users among you, that rally went into another TS3 sell, again on a black stroke red STF, so it could have been used for a pyramid. In other words, adding to your existing short trade. I'll just place a DP on from this low here to give us an area of where we're anticipating support, and it was just above that. So if you were taking this TS3 sell here as a pyramid, you'd then be looking to run that down into where the previous days or the previous setup's target was for an additional 4R profit as well. So both trades worked out very nicely, where the pyramid came down here for a 4R profit, and the first trade here would have come down to its first target for an almost 5R profit. The hardest bit was this TS4 sell, because this was on a black STF for the ES. It wasn't on the YM, so the YM was dead easy. So the question being is, if you're already in a profitable short trade, in other words a profitable trade already, do you want to basically swap to another trade in the opposite direction? And basically, for the more experienced users, we go to the higher time frame to see whether there's any reason why we'd want to then swap to long. So if we come back down to here to our 15-minute chart, you can see that the market, I'll just clear that off, the market was actually coming down here. There was no major support at this particular low here early in the day. You can see there's no pivot here to actually put a DP on to get support. So the only support level would have been a DP off this particular low. So in other words, we've only got to major support coming off at that level. So if we now go back to the 3-minute chart, can you see how major support didn't come in until this level here? In other words, there was no major support here, so the large blue trend was still down. So another reason, there was no reason to want to swap this to long trades. It's quite happy to keep short trades on the way down. So in other words, again, a very nice profitable trade off what was the very bar of the high of the day. Many people say it's impossible to catch the highs and lows of the day. Well, here we did here on this TS3 sell, as well as using the knowledge of the inside gap to close the gap right to the tick there to catch the very high of the day. So what a great place to be entering a short trade. The market on the ES then would have come down to the first target there for a nice 4.9 hour profit, and as we've seen, there was an opportunity to pyramid down there. I think the nicer market was actually the YM, because the YM again had our TS3 sell at the high of the day there and down into the first target there for a nice 7.5 hour profit. The profit here was actually larger than the ES, so may have been the market that you would have actually considered to take rather than the ES, and there was no such confusion with these buy setups here because the STF was red. So a good example of the cyclical nature of trading, where we've had some hard days, in other words some very choppy sideways yucky days, as you can see here the last couple of days, but then after some harder days the cycle then goes round to then be able to give you some nicer trades, and as we can see here, very nice ABC pattern for a standard TS3 sell that would have resulted in a very nice high profitable trade. So a good example of MTPredictor in action yesterday for Tuesday the 31st of March, and also a good example of how the market's moving cycles and will then go through periods of hard days or quarter days when you won't be do much trading, into other days where you get some very nice clear clean trade setups that result in some very nice big profitable trades. So a couple of good things to look at in today's MTPredictor video.